You wouldn't just say, well, I hope whoever is working there maybe fumbles through this and like we don't like let the quarterly numbers for our company just happen to be passed down to whoever has that laptop next. No, you need an actual process, you need certificate, you need auditability, and you need documentation to prove that your corporate data is not driving off, your employee data is not driving off in a data breach in that vehicle.
We are the Keyboard Samurai, podcast about the business of cyber and tech, here to help you or your business improve. Here's your host, Wil Klu. Let's hack into it now.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. Always glad to see everybody who I can't see. As always, do the like and subscribe thing, all that good stuff. Drive the numbers, make it good for everybody here. And today, it's cool. We get to talk about a very interesting and new topic, but I will let Merry introduce yourself. Why don't you give us 30 seconds of who you are and why we care.
Hey, Will, thank you so much for having me, and I'm excited to talk with you and your listeners today. My name is Merry Marwig. I am the Vice President of Global Communications and Advocacy at Privacy for Cars. It is the world's leading authority on vehicle privacy and data security. And today we're going to be talking about an overlooked endpoint in your security program, which is cars, corporate used cars.
I love it. And, as always, everybody knows we have a little chat before the show. And like you said, it's going to be interesting because, you and I have both kind of worked in this space and we know all of the stuff that's going on that's like super cool and interesting or future thought, but like the reality is, as you were kind of telling me, is there's a problem now, there's an issue now, and it's not just an issue for us as individuals from a privacy standpoint, but also for corporations and for people or for firms. So for CISOs out there or for companies who are, I know, like it's funny you mentioned company cars, which is kind of an older tradition, but I still know a couple places that still do it. And most of those companies don't necessarily have big security teams in place. So let's talk, let's start there with what is the immediate threat, concern, risk? Like, why do we care?
Right. So the thing is, cars today are really big computers on wheels. And a lot of people think of cars as just a means of transportation, but no. These types of devices are collecting the same kind of data and more than a laptop or a smartphone would. But for whatever reason, they've been overlooked in security programs. So they're not being properly handled in their life cycle. When you give someone a corporate car, whether that's an actual like old school fleet vehicle like you were talking about, or maybe it's a rental car that they're planning to use, or even what I call BYOD car, right? Like some people do use their personal vehicles for work purposes. And how are you planning to manage the personal and corporate data on that device? So we're talking about all sorts of data on cars. So that's like contacts, call logs, text messages, browser history, credentials, garage door codes, parking door codes. Browser history. I don't know if I already said that. So much information can live on the car. And what a lot of folks don't realize is, unlike a laptop or unlike a smartphone, most cars are unencrypted. So you just need the key and to sit your butt in that front seat, and you can have access to this information, plain text. And we can talk a little bit later about examples of how that's gone awry in corporate settings. But that's really what we're talking about. How are security teams at corporations protecting the personal and corporate data on cars themselves?
So, I know, like, as somebody who travels a lot as a consultant, you go where the work is, right? I'm always very sure after I get out of the rental to like factory reset the entire radio. I don't just disconnect my Bluetooth, right? Is that sufficient? Should we be doing something different? You mentioned like, is it a matter of that data is even not doing that, somebody just takes their phone and leaves, or like you said, it's their personal car. I use my personal car for work all the time. My phone's not in there, but there's still data residing in the vehicle, you're saying?
Absolutely. And so let me reframe this for you. when you offboard an employee and they need to give their laptop back, do you say, make sure you delete all your data off of that? Or do you have an actual process that you ship that laptop somewhere and it's going to get wiped to the proper NIST 888 data sanitization guideline standards? You get a certificate of deletion for your audit trail. You know that you've done your part with that device. And that's where people kind of think about cars differently. It is a personal device. You're the one behind the wheel, but it's also a corporate asset that needs to be managed, and you can't rely on end users for your security. I mean, if that was your security policy for like emails or any other thing, people would probably look at you sideways. And that's where we need to shift our thinking, right? So just because your employee, may know how, like you may know how to do a factory reset, which may also not capture all of the data stored on that car. In the deletion, does your employee, your colleague who is in the HR team know how to do that? Does your colleague who's in marketing know how to do that? So, pushing this off on end users is not the answer. In my view, the best way to tackle this problem is to require your automotive vendors, the companies you already do business with, to offer that service to you. Just like rental car companies used to, you had to put gas in it before you returned the car, right? So you either do the gas or they charge you to fill it up, and there's an upcharge for it. These automotive companies can offer this to you as a service. It's something you want to pay for. Otherwise, you're allowing a data breach to just roll out of your parking lot.
Interesting. So there's no rental car option of delete my data when I leave, is there? Or and I don't want to talk about the future, like you said, but like that's not the case right now, right?
Absolutely. So I want to, one of the things we talked about before we got on this was I want to center this in reality, right? So no, there is no magic delete button that you wave a magic wand, but there are 100% ready to go existing tools that are made for automotive companies to do exactly these types of wipes. So data deletions, it exists. This is not some future hypothetical thing. It's just a matter of practice. And so what I'd like to encourage any security professional on this podcast who's listening is to lean into your contracts. So just demand this, just like you would put this in your laptop recycling program. Right? You wouldn't just say, well, I hope whoever is working there maybe fumbles through this and we don't let the quarterly numbers for our company just happen to be passed down to whoever has that laptop next. No, you need an actual process. You need certificate. You need auditability. And you need documentation to prove that your corporate data is not driving off, your employee data is not driving off in a data breach in that vehicle. And there's real world problems with that, Will. So let me give you an example. I wrote a white paper about this. You can find it at privacy4cars.com/CISO, CISO, if you want to. Let me give you an example. Our researchers got a hold of a recycled infotainment system of a former fleet vehicle of a high-level banker. And in that infotainment system was the cell phone number of the CEO of the bank, the CFO, the general counsel, the head of HR, unencrypted banking pins for his personal and corporate, multiple user credentials, the home address of him, his family members, other people. And imagine what that could do in the wrong hands. Thankfully, our researchers were ethical, reported this, and it's all fine. But how often is that happening? Another example, Will, that just knocked my socks off, and you can find this on page 13 of that white paper, is a former UK military contractor's fleet vehicle. So that fleet vehicle was, put through remarketing, but not deleted. And we had so much information about this person, all of the military research facilities that he had visited. He had also gone to reportedly decommissioned military sites as well. We found personal communication, identities of his family members, the location of his second home, information about his children, all sorts of information that in the wrong hands could really pose a threat to that individual employee, but also the organization. The third example I'll share is we had our researchers got a hold of a pharmaceutical representative's former fleet vehicle as well. Plain text right in the text message history were patients who were doing a cancer trial drug all of their personal information in that car. So it's a data breach. There's no way around it. It's unauthorized disclosure to people who shouldn't be seeing that highly sensitive information. And there's an easy solution for it that exists on the market today. So no excuses. What I'd really like to encourage people to do is put these endpoints in your company policies. I have written one. That was a whole story. I try to figure that one out, which you can go into if you'd like. But that white paper will have that sample policy if anybody wants it.
So is it a physical access required thing to get the data? Like you say, like you're pulling, like I could just start going to junkyards and start pulling, infotainment systems out if I thought that was the case. Or is it obviously we know you can remotely, get into the cams and stuff like that too. Is that like just as viable to be able to pull that data then?
The real risk is physical access to the car. But again, cars are not things that are highly disposed of. They're highly recycled. They're reused again. They're put back, refurbished is the word I'm looking for. They're highly refurbished. The oldest cars on the road today tend to be 13, I believe it's 13 years old. So it's not like a laptop where you decommission this thing and then it's over in 2 years. These have long life cycles, and every time that car changes hands, it should go through a proper media sanitization as policy. That's the thing. Again, it exists today. The NIST 888 media sanitization guidelines came out 20 years ago in 2006. They've been updated twice, 2014, and then most recently in 2025. So this is not new. It's just been overlooked. So, my question to you is, if you're doing it for laptops, if you're doing it for smartphones or tablets or whatever IoT device you've got in your corporate infrastructure, why not cars?
Right. Well, so, and I, people buy used cars all the time, and I guarantee like most used car dealerships aren't doing any kind of they might do it. Like, hopefully they do at least a factory reset, but like if you're telling us it's not going to matter, right? Do the major dealers have this? Like, is this something that the auto manufacturers are doing, or we have to be like, they know, do they even know they can do it? I guess, does your local BMW dealership know that when they go to resell it, they should be doing this?
Well, that's a great point. So I do want to give manufacturers a shout out. They've got the procedures on how to do exactly this. It's really a problem of process. Where in the process does that deletion or that media sanitization fit? And it should be every time that vehicle changes hands. For example, in New Jersey, they passed a law in 2024, I believe it was, called the New Jersey Motor Vehicle Data Deletion Act, that specifically applies to dealers. So anytime a dealer takes in a vehicle meant for resale or release, they are required to offer that NIST standardized deletion to the consumer. But again, this is just a best practice. We shouldn't be doing this just because the law says so. By the way, other laws do say so. For example, in Europe, the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, does require when you do not have a lawful basis to process someone's personal data anymore, which if you're reselling a car, tell me how that works, you have to delete the personal data. I also want to give a shout out. Industry is also coalescing around this. In the UK, the National Association of Motor Auctions just came out with industry-wide standard for this data deletion. So every auction that processes a car over there, that's part of that group, will be using that same exact standard. So yes, industry is stepping up. I also will say there's a number of auctions in the United States and Canada that do offer this service, but again, to the listeners of this podcast, you've got to request it. Make sure that it's happening for your vehicles. You are responsible for the data deletion, not the manufacturer. Just like when you have a laptop, when you need to wipe that, you're not calling Dell to say, "Excuse me, can you remote wipe this?" No,
especially in the United States, it's not.
Right?
Yeah, we're not very we don't like privacy regulations. We like our government and our big corporate entities to be able to get access to it.
Right. And you know what, Will, one thing I'll also say too is I think a big problem of why this is an issue, even though it's been so standard for 20 years in other industries, is that folks are just not aware of the data collection capabilities of cars today. So for example, in California, they have a regulation called Notice at Collection. which basically says every time you want to collect personal data, which cars do, you need to inform the consumer what is being collected before you start collecting that. And what's interesting about California's law is that it also applies to employees. So anybody listening, if you've got an office in California, if you've got people driving cars in California, make sure that you're giving them information up front. One thing I want to say about that, Wil, is I don't know how often you read privacy notices and privacy policies, but they're dense, full of legalese. I mean, it's hard to figure out what they're saying half the time. And that is also a problem with, again, this awareness that's lacking. And so one thing that the Department of Commerce, they had a group called the IoT Advisory Board suggested is giving kind of like a nutrition label of what are the data practices of that car so that somebody can easily understand, hey, this collects biometrics and does it
and what does that mean for you, right? Like that's the other thing. That's the one thing. That's the, again, Europe GDPR. It has to be in plain language. You have to say easily who to contact, and here's how you get rid of my data. And in the US, we have, you know, huge swaths of data privacy language instead.
And it's crazy. I'll tell you, in that white paper, again, it's privacy, the number 4 cars.com/CISO, CISO. You'll see an example of one car's privacy notices and terms and all the contracts you had to read just to understand the data collection use. It was, I think, 12 separate documents. So the main privacy notice, the connected car privacy notice, the terms of service, all 12 documents. And the average reader, it would take 5.5 hours to read that. And in one of the cases, you needed a 18th level graduate, postgraduate level education to understand it because it's in legalese. So riddle me this, how is a regular person just hopping behind the wheel for your company, whether it's a rental car or a fleet vehicle, ever going to figure that out? So that's why, you know, providing that nutrition label of like the greatest hits, what is this car doing? You know, does it collect geolocation data, biometric data, voice prints, like, you know, user profiles, whatever. Just let them know when you onboard the person, give them the car, give them that notice. If anyone's interested to see what an example of that could look like, go to vehicleprivacyreport.com to see what that could look like. And all you need is a VIN. So if you've got a VIN, check out your VIN. It's usually on your insurance card. You can find your VIN, or just go on any for sale website and just pull a VIN to see what an example of like that nutrition label could look like.
Wow, that's kind of cool and interesting. Well, so I have 2 questions then. As individual consumers, like what can we do or should we do?
Oh, that's a great question too. So I wanted to frame this more about what CISOs can do because we need you. We need security professionals to use their professional power and make this change. That's going to flow down to consumers as well. But, you know, I would argue
well, no, that's good, because that kind of is what I figured was like this is not a personal issue that like we as individuals can take. So like as a CISO in an organization, obviously I can write policies, but like, is there anything I can do proactively? You know, well, the other part, you know, there's 2 things. Like, you know, what can I do proactively from a governance monitoring standpoint? Like off the top of my head, I'm immediately thinking, well, you know, how many times do people you work with, you know, vehicle gets stolen or broken into, or they sell it and never think about this, right? So there's definitely got to be some additional processes we can build. But is there anything that can be done from like a monitoring and governance standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say, again, just having the security professionals like really weigh in here and explain, yeah, this is a huge oversight. Why are endpoints like these not included? That's a really good start. And that's going to trickle down to the consumer experiences as well. You can read news article after news article after news article where regular everyday consumers say, wow, I had no idea my car was doing this and it affected my insurance, or I had no idea that I was responsible for knowing all of the intricacies of how to delete data off of this device when I traded in my car. I would have loved to have an automotive professional, an expert, tell me what to do because they do this sort of thing every single day. And so that's why I'm really trying to encourage people to look to their automotive providers to offer this service. Whether you're a corporate CISO or security professional, ask your automotive providers to do it. And whether you're a consumer as well, again, ask your automotive providers. Go to your dealerships and say, hey, I want to trade in with you, but are you going to actually delete my data from this car? Like how they're required in New Jersey, or, I want to buy this car, but I don't know how to price or comparison shop based on the data, because I do or do not want some of these things. And it's also not all doom and gloom, Will. Some of these cars have really amazing technology that's extremely helpful and assistive, and people want to use it, but they also want to feel confident in like, okay, I can back out of this, or I can turn off the data sharing, or if I don't want that, I know that my dealership will delete my data. So I don't need to worry. A phrase that's like rolling around in my head these days is, you've always heard that like buyer beware phrase, but now we're in an era of seller beware. So again, demand that proof, demand that NIST certificate of sanitization, or what we call a certificate of deletion, proving that the device has been properly sanitized before it changes hands.
That's awesome. Well, I know we could probably go on even longer, but because I'll start diverting into tangents. This is super interesting stuff. But so, Merry, where can everybody find you on the interwebs if they want to?
Feel free to search me on LinkedIn. My name is Merry, Merry, Marwig, Marwig. I'm the only one. So if you find a Merry Marwig out there, that is me. And I'm happy to talk about car privacy and data security anytime. And Will, I'd be honored to be back on your show next time to talk about a new safety issue with data.
Oh, nice.
So stay tuned for that, folks. And if you want to read that white paper I mentioned, again, it's privacy4cars.com/CISO.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
We'll have all the links in the doobly-doo down below too. Appreciate your time, Mary. This has been great.
Wow. Thanks. I had fun, Will.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. Follow Wil and the podcast on LinkedIn/Wil Klu. Visit Wil Klu ME for information on services he offers to help your cyber or tech business grow. Until next time, Sinaculator.